Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Defining Your Brand podcast. Today, I am interviewing Cole Goddard. He is a coach, and he is a writer, and he is just an all-around amazing guy. I met this guy when he lived back in St. Louis, where I live, and he was a coach of mine at the time, and I just loved getting to know him. And so I wanted to have him on the podcast to share all the things that he's up to, because I think that you should know him too. So I hope you guys enjoy this interview. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I will apologize ahead of time. My dogs just constantly want to go in and out of the house, and I don't have a quiet place away from them to record.
You know what? I constantly want to go in and out of the house too, but so I can relate.
So that might be the only thing. If I'll continue to talk, but I may just leave the camera for like 30 seconds to just let them know.
Cole Goddard, the man who's always trying to get me to do his ab workouts, and I always decline. But that is why you are so much greater and so much more in better shape than I am. So maybe I need to take a lesson from you.
Hardly.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Quarantine life is good. I'm not a fan of change. So like
I can relate to that.
When this first went down, I was like, oh no, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, I'm not gonna have a schedule anymore. And then like within like 2 days, I was like, I love this.
Right.
This is my best life. And then now I'm like having to start to go slowly back to work again and do more things. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, you get used to the new normal, and then you're like, I can deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can completely relate. I mean, my whole life, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I've like been a quick adapter to things, I feel like. So if, I may not like something, but it'll, I'll get used to it very quickly, and then that will be my new normal. So it's, I don't know, not a problem for me because I'm cool with being kind of by myself and introverted and can deal with that. But I'm like you. I don't love change, but I can adapt quickly if it happens.
Yes, you said introvert, and that's a good way of putting it. And I don't always identify with being an introvert. Sometimes
Yeah.
I identify with being an extrovert. Or as I've learned, like an ambivert, which is somewhere like right in the middle, which is more where I'm at because every test I ever take, I'm always like 50%,
Yeah.
like, or like 51% introvert, 49% extrovert or something, like
Right.
something stupid like that. But I think growing up as an only child, I'm learning that I'm really good at making the most of the time that I have.
I feel like you and I are even more similar. I knew we were similar, but I too am an only child, and I can completely relate to that sentiment. So yeah, I agree.
You know, we've learned to capitalize on the skills that we didn't think were skills.
Right. And now we're here using something that we just like to, fill our time with it. So speaking of which, how I met you was as my coach. And from what I hear, I followed you since then. But even before then, from everybody I've heard, you've kind of always been in this fitness space. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I originally, like as nerdy as it is, I got into fitness because I remember the movie 300 coming out when I was like
Yes.
15 maybe.
Wait, how old are you?
I'm 30 now, so maybe 15 years ago.
Okay.
Or at least it was like on the verge of coming out. I don't know when that movie actually came out, but I don't know if I could drive yet, or if I could, it was like 16.
Okay.
Um, and I, I mean, I'd always, like, I think most people, just human beings in general, they see somebody physically and they're like, oh, I would like to look like that.
Right.
And that was kind of what sparked my passion for fitness.
Mm.
I had been working out prior to that. My sophomore year of high school, I was like 115 pounds soaking wet.
I
Um,
cannot relate to that. That's one thing I cannot relate to.
well, yeah, I was this scrawny kid. And so I put on like 50 pounds of muscle that year, just
Okay.
started like working out and eating more.
Hmm.
And I had no idea what I was doing. So it wasn't even like good muscle. It was like, it was just weight. I just put on weight. And part of that was like, I was growing as well.
Sure.
But I've always just kind of been obsessed with what the body is capable of.
Mm.
And I think Socrates has a quote, and I've quoted this before, um, but it's, and I'm gonna butcher it because I'd have to pull it up on my phone right now, and I'm not gonna take time away to do it. Maybe I will because you said you can edit it out.
I said I can. I didn't say I'd guarantee it, but go
Yeah.
for it.
Well, to each their own, right?
You know, we want to be truthful here to honor the people of the past. So
Exactly. And the quote goes, "No man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. It is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable."
mm,
And I've always loved that quote because you see people of all walks of life doing amazing physical feats of strength or agility or whatever it is, whether it's like somebody doing a bar workout in a park or something like it. There's just amazing things that people do. And I'm like, I may never be able to do those things,
right.
but I don't ever want to shy away from trying to get close.
Yeah. And
That makes sense.
it's funny because it seems like, everybody says that something's not possible until someone breaks the record or someone, does the next greatest thing. And so it's like the I don't think that I've heard that quote before, but I love it because it seems like we'll never be able to find that limit. Maybe it's the limit now, but it may not be ultimately what we can do because you can constantly push yourself further and further. So, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, you said it best. And I mean, even little things like moving the 3-point line in basketball back because everybody just drains shots left and right, and it makes the game less interesting when they do.
Right.
And it's just like like human beings will continue to push themselves for hopefully centuries to come, and there will always be something new or some record breaker,
Mm.
some absolute abnormal human being that just comes along and changes things. And that's so interesting to me.
Yeah. So this is how you started off, and then once you put on your 50 pounds and became a man, what was the next? What was the next for you in that journey?
um for me, it probably began what I consider myself to be like a student of life,
Mm.
um where I like delved in. I was a student in high school, like all of us were, but it delved into like me wanting to learn as much as I can about the human body. And so I started reading books about the human body. I started seeking out professionals that knew more than me so that I could learn. I was doing on my summer vacations, I was doing unpaid internships at the YMCA or at a CrossFit gym just to learn from people,
Mm.
and mainly to work out for free because I was a poor high school student.
Hey, we've
and
all been there.
and yeah, and that more so, like my fitness has changed 100 times since then, but my desire for knowledge hasn't. And so whether it's learning to move my body or learning photography or learning how to be a better writer, I'm constantly learning on the side of whatever's going on in my life.
Mhm. So, I mean, you
And
mentioned so many different kind of things that you've gone through it. I mean, from what I know, you've done, weightlifting and bodybuilding and CrossFit and, high interval and all these different, is that true? Like from an outside perspective, that seems to be kind of, you've done it all.
yes, I've done it all, and I've done most of it competitively to some extent. I
Okay.
never was competitive in bodybuilding or anything. It just was never really a desire of mine. But I was a competitive Olympic weightlifter. I was a competitive CrossFitter. I was a competitive mountain or rock climber, not mountain climber, rock climber. Um, I mean, competition breeds results faster, but it also gives the potential of like breaking the body down quicker as well.
Mm,
So when I moved from a state of, oh, I enjoy CrossFit, to, oh, I want to be competitive in CrossFit,
mm,
suddenly like my anxiety was higher.
mm,
My body didn't want to do things until it started to do things. And I say that exactly like that intentionally, because I would wake up in the morning and my body would ache. Like,
mm.
especially when I was an Olympic weightlifter, like it wasn't my muscles were sore. My muscles were never sore. My joints, my bones, my ligaments physically hurt. But the second I started squatting, the second I started to warm up or really like get under some heavier weight, I started to like, my joints started to wake up, my body woke up. I would feel good for 2 hours out of 24 hours in the day.
Right.
And I I do miss that at times. Like there was a certain level of, I don't know what the correct word is in my head, but like it felt like a level of elitism. I didn't feel like I was better than anybody else, but it felt like I was training for a higher purpose,
Mm,
um, other than just physical health and whatever. And so I do miss those times, but at the same time, like I was looking ahead at the future, and I would come home from training at the gym for 2-3 hours a day, and I had no energy to play with my dog. I didn't want to do anything other than watch Netflix and
right.
chill.
Right.
And so um, I personally decided about 3 years ago now to kind of move away from competition, move away from pushing myself so hard. And it's been a struggle. Like I still find myself going into my garage right now and wanting to work out for 2 hours, and it's
Yeah.
not necessary. And with everything else going on in my life, it's not conducive to living a fulfilling life. And that's especially true when you're working a 40-hour job and another 10 to 20 hours on top of it with a part-time job. And you just or at least I um, find myself being called to the gym, but also wanting to push back on that feeling because I know I can get sucked in so easily.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it's a weird because I feel like there's pros and cons to both of it. Because, like you said, that competition kind of allows it to push you in a way that you probably wouldn't be pushed normally or allow yourself to push yourself. Because I know it's so easy, especially right now, like being at home, that you're like, I can take today off, or I don't need to move my body, or whatever it may be. So, like, what do you think is the difference between pushing yourself and enjoying life? Can they both exist?
Yes, they can definitely both exist. And better men and women than I am have figured out that balance. Um, for myself, that has come to like, maybe I don't push myself in the amount of time I'm dedicating to a craft. Maybe for me, I'm a multitasker in just all areas of my life. Like
Mm,
I get antsy when I'm just sitting there watching TV. Like I
me
have
too.
to, even if I'm just like playing on my phone or texting my girlfriend or a friend or something, like it's like I need to be doing something.
Right.
And that's a bad habit of mine, but it's who I am. My girlfriend hates it and whatever. But um it's the same when it comes to the gym. Is like I want to be doing everything at once. I want to be lifting heavy weight, but I also want to be able to be a master at moving my body in a spatial surrounding, like being extra good at pull-ups or muscle ups or handstand push-ups or something, whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
I always catch myself wanting to do more.
Mm,
So for myself, that balance, to bring it back to your question, that balance for me comes from more intentionally or more intention in what I'm doing in that moment.
gotcha.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I think, again, I can completely resonate with that because I, so I, it's funny, I have had like anxiety kind of rise up in the past year or so, which is not something that I've dealt with before. So it's an interesting gauge to what's going in my life. Like I can look at it and be like, what is this saying about what else is going on? So I find that if I'm always still, if I'm not moving, if I'm not active, if I'm not don't have a project to work on, I feel that anxiety level kind of rise, like I'm letting time slip away. And so I can completely understand, like I feel that need of I have to do everything now because there's not going to be time later. And so I want to always be good at everything. But I think I've heard this said before, like if you try to be good at everything, then you're not going to be really great at anything because you're trying to do too much. So yeah, I can relate to that. And I don't know that there's a right answer. So, but I think, yeah, I understand that. And I think I have competed in like CrossFit competitions and different things. And I've seen the benefit of I've worked harder, or I've even as much as just working out at a gym that is not my own. There's that little extra push that you're like, okay, someone else is watching, or someone's operating at a different fitness level, and you want to perform your best. Where if you're in your own environment, you can say, I can take it a little easy. It's been a hard week. It's whatever. So you can allow, yourself to kind of take a break a little bit. So yeah, I think there's probably times to push yourself and times to let yourself rest. And you just gotta have to know when is the right time for both of those things. Would you say?
Yes. Yes, 100%. I think having that internal body awareness, the knowledge of when you should rest or when it's time to pivot or whatever is so crucial. And I'm not sure, I can't speak for everyone, but I don't think enough of us have that knowledge in our lives.
Yeah.
Maybe that comes from maturity. Maybe it comes from doing, you know, so many things and then learning what actually sticks, kind of like throwing paint on a wall and seeing what sticks. But
Mm,
I think having that internal awareness of what is needed um, at any given time is very important.
yeah.
Even
So
if it's just,
no,
sorry,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, even if it's just like I need to sleep more, or
Yeah.
I need a day where I just take care of myself. I
Right.
don't need to be around people, or maybe what I need is to get a drink with all my friends. Like
Mm,
just just knowing what you need at any given moment is very important.
yeah. And it's, I think, very common that we don't listen to that. We think about what I have to do in the sense of like what we think we need to do, and not actually kind of in the sense of taking care of ourselves. Because there's I think a balance even to that. And that's what I've loved about, I mean, I have been in a health and fitness arena far shorter of a time than you have. But what I've learned in the time that I have is the lessons that I've learned in the gym has carried over into life. And I think some of those things are, you know, those expectations that you put on yourself that maybe aren't necessary, and knowing when to give yourself a break. And I think those are great takeaways that I've had from, the gym, that even in life, like, you got to know when to say no to things, when to push yourself a little harder, when to take care of yourself, when to tell yourself you don't have to do something that day. Um, and it's, I think even that thing is a skill that we have to constantly be working on.
Today's sponsor is brought to you by Live Well, Love Well Apparel. Live Well, Love Well Apparel is a t-shirt company, but it's not just a t-shirt company. I mean, how many times have you bought a t-shirt and that you've loved, but it's actually not doing anything other than just being an extra t-shirt in your closet? How many of you have bought something to support a cause or support an organization, and you bought something, but it may be something that you never wear or never really cared about? Live Well, Love Well Apparel is changing that. So how it's doing that is that it is designing t-shirts that you actually want to wear. This material is soft, it's got tri-blend material, it's comfortable, and it's just an amazing t-shirt, and something that, like I said, you want to wear and want to pair with other things in your closet. And not only that, but it's a company that gives back. So this company right now is donating the proceeds to No Kid Hungry. No Kid Hungry is an organization that helps kids that may not have access to food at home. So when they go to school, that they have a meal that's provided for them. Right now in this pandemic, though, kids don't have that opportunity. They're not at school where school lunches are provided. So No Kid Hungry is making sure that these kids that normally have food provided for them still have a meal. So go check out Live Well, Love Well Apparel by going to lwlwapparel.com.
So talk about, so I met you at our gym in St. Louis, which you are no longer at, and I'm very disappointed in you for that. No, I'm happy for you, and I'm just sad that you're not here. But what when you were in St. Louis, you were doing kind of strictly weightlifting, is that right?
Hmm.
And then now that you are, tell us where you're at, so I don't say the wrong state.
Yeah, so I now currently reside in Charlotte, North Carolina.
That's what I thought, but I didn't want to say it wrong in
Um,
case.
and yeah, I was at the time strictly weightlifting, and when I moved here, I was still strictly weightlifting.
Hmm.
Um, and I moved away from it because, like I said, I was just so tired and so fatigued. Um, but I had also started working for a new company. Some people may have heard of it, some people may have not.
Hmm.
Called Lululemon.
Never heard of it.
Um, and um, through Lulu, we have this thing where we encourage our employees to go work out in the community and like meet people and stuff. And um, and so in the community, I was starting to do more yoga, starting to do more HIIT classes, and just like I wasn't working out alone. I was working out with people, but on top of that, like it was hard to balance an hour workout that was a high intensity boot camp and then also 2 hours of competitive like weightlifting training.
Right.
So I slowly started to realize like I would see all these fit people like everywhere I went. And I started to realize that it doesn't really matter what you do for fitness. it just matters that you love it enough that you keep showing up.
Right.
And at the same time, I wasn't in love with weightlifting anymore.
Mm.
I certainly loved every time I PR'd a lift.
Sure.
It felt good to be stronger, but I wasn't loving the journey to get there anymore. And so I slowly started to back away. I started to do more CrossFit again. And then eventually I just started, I quit all of that and just started bouncing around gyms in Charlotte so I can meet more people.
Mm.
I ended up quitting coaching for about a year. I had just kind of lost interest in just all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went full-time with Lulu. And I'm still full-time with Lulu today, but I have since gone back to teaching. And I am with Barry's, which is a high-intensity treadmill and dumbbell style boot camp. And I teach there part-time and I'm full-time at Lulu. And as far as my workouts, I am trying my hardest to become a master at calisthenics or body weight exercises.
Which is, I've found, sometimes more difficult than anything else.
Yeah, push-ups are going to be the death of me, I swear.
I hate them.
No matter how many I do, I'm not good at them.
Like, same here.
But I think there's so much so much you can learn from just working out in a 5 foot by 5 foot square space and finding out just what exactly your body itself can be capable of.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that I loved seeing, kind of watching you on social media and everything, and just having conversations with you once you moved to Charlotte, was that idea of kind of, well, a couple of things. One, doing multiple different kind of things, because I think it is easy, especially for someone like me who didn't have a background in fitness, to get into one thing and just think, okay, this is what I do now, and then love it or hate it, not give yourself, that fluidity to kind of go into it and leave it, because you have this sense, kind of a loyalty of it. At least I have found that. And in my journey with it too, I've had to let myself still show up, but still allow myself to, back off when I need to, because there was times when I just wanted to quit. And I think there's a lot of people, and I liked what you said about just finding that thing that you love, because I think if you don't love the thing you're doing, then like most people, you will just quit what you're doing because you fall out of love with it. And you don't have to stick to the one thing, but it's so important just to move and be active and, stay healthy, because it's the one thing that we have. So you can give up on a certain type of, fitness, but not give up on, taking care of yourself. And I feel like I've seen you do that well throughout kind of your fitness journey, is to move in and out of different areas. So I think people can learn that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, I've seen you kind of from a distance talk about berries and everything, but for those who don't know, because I don't even know that much, talk a little bit about Barry's Bootcamp and what that looks like.
Yeah, so Barry's is anywhere from a 50-minute to an hour-long class, depending on the studio that you find. It's boutique fitness, so what that means is it's not going to be everywhere. Okay. And it's broken up into, let's we'll go with an hour as an example, but the classes that I teach are 50 minutes.
Mhm.
It's broken up into 30 minutes of treadmills and 30 minutes of dumbbell work on the floor. Every day of the week is a different body part, so it sticks to that like classic bodybuilding style of training. So Monday is arms and abs, Tuesday is lower body, Wednesday is chest and back, so on and so forth throughout the week. At any given point on the treadmill, you might be walking, you might be jogging, running, or sprinting. And it's just a really fun atmosphere to be in. The room that we work out in is called the Red Room. It's a dark room with bright red lights that just make everybody look a little sexier, a little, a little better in those lights. And the
Probably makes you
music is
feel a
just,
little bit better about yourself too while you're in there too. Feel a little
yeah,
cooler.
yeah, exactly. And the music is loud and fun. Like I play a lot of EDM music, hip hop remixes. I'm not so big into pop music, but I sneak it in for the people. But it's just like a really fun, like super encouraging atmosphere, as I think, any good fitness is, right? You like,
Yeah.
if you're going to own a gym, you want it to be encouraging, you want it to be a safe space for people. And I mean, that's exactly what brought me like to Barry's was it was very open to letting everyone come. And through that, like I've just re-fallen in love with just like working out again.
That's cool. So I'd love to kind of shift gears a little bit. I know we kind of focused solely on fitness, but I'd love to hear like how, whether it be personal or like what you've learned from kind of the journey over the past however many years, what have you kind of carried over into your personal life, and how do you apply some of the things that you've learned and outside of the gym and just day to day?
Um, my kind of rules to life, because I think we all have some sort of rules that keep us in check.
Yeah.
I try to read every day.
You're a better man than I am in that regard.
I mean, I don't always, but I tried at least, which is at least every day I try to read before I go to bed, whether it's a chapter of a book, and it doesn't have to be, a self-help mindset book. It can be whatever I want. I like to read a lot of fantasy, a lot of sci-fi. But I also try to get in those more like mind mentality books or something that challenges my ideals. So read every day. For myself as a writer, I try to write every day. That's the one I probably fall short on the most.
Yeah.
Whether it's just one poem or one sentence, I try to put something, pen to paper or a note in my phone, something that I can build off of at a later time. And then I try to learn something new every day, intentionally learn something new every day.
Examples?
Examples, sometimes it's just listening to a podcast in my car.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right now, especially during quarantine, I'm using the apps Udemy and Skillshare, which are just like free learning platforms. Not free. You pay for, like, Skillshare, I think, is $10 a month. Don't quote me on that. And Udemy, you pay by the class. So I'm learning photography on Udemy. And then on Skillshare, I'm learning just different methods for writing short stories or writing action scenes in a story. But I try to intentionally learn something every day, and that's something you can do at any given moment, right? Like
Yeah.
from this conversation, I'm going to walk away with something that I didn't previously have. Through any situation, as little as it is, to harken back to fitness, right? Like you get an hour in the gym, you can learn something about yourself in that hour. You can push yourself a little harder and walk away a little more confident because you did something you didn't think you were capable of.
Right.
At any given moment, you can take away something. You can watch a TV show, and it could be the dumbest TV show of all time.
Yeah.
But you can still walk away with something from that experience.
And I think that something to that effect, like it doesn't even necessarily have to be, oh, I'm going to force myself to learn something, but taking a look at anything and just being present and saying like, what can I learn from this situation? Just allowing yourself to kind of be open to something and walking away from it with something.
Hell yeah.
So what does the future look like for you, Mr. Goddard?
That's a great question. For now, I'm going to make the most out of this quarantine. I am slowly going back to work with Lulu and Berries. I'm teaching at least one class a week with Berries online.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Lulu, I'm in the store just doing like fulfilling some online orders a couple of days a week, and then helping develop my team so that they can be the best people that they can be in the meantime. But for myself, I want to take more pictures. I want to write more poetry and more short stories. I want to get outside more and work out. Drink more coffee and
Yeah, I think I'm doing too much of that. Maybe that's why my sleep's so messed up.
I mean, that's the other thing too, is I stay up late and read because I get captivated by the characters of a book or something. And then I wake up early because I want to get in, another hour of reading before I start my day, because I don't get to do that when I'm working.
Right.
And I don't know. I think you said it. It's just developing more presentness in my life, more mindfulness.
Well, something you just said, and I don't know why I didn't think of this, but I want to learn a little bit more about your journey with photography, since that seems to be a little new, but it also is something that I very much resonate with. So how'd you get into that?
So I first got into it in college. I took a black and white photography class. I've always been obsessed with photography, and it's always been an art form that that's really resonated with me. I've never, and I say that because I can enjoy a good painting, or I can appreciate a good, painting or drawing or something, but I've never really felt the desire to learn the skills to do that. But photography is different, and photography, similar and unsimilar to writing, for instance, it's something you can do at any given point in time. So I took a black and white photography class. I loved it. I wish I had taken more photography classes in college. But thankfully, we live in a world where knowledge is literally at your fingertips on your computer.
Yeah.
So about 4 months ago, I'm fresh to photography.
Hey, we all got to start somewhere.
But about 4 months ago, I just started watching YouTube videos to just learn as much as I can with what I perceived to be photography. And it wasn't really going anywhere. I didn't have a camera. I didn't, luckily, like, phones nowadays are, you know, nearly as great as a lot of cameras.
Well, I have a lot of people ask me, they're like, what do you think about this camera? Should I buy it? And it's like $1,000. I'm like, um, if you're not going to go like professional with it, if you put this camera and your phone side by side, it's literally the same phone camera. And it's insane
Yeah,
because when I started it, that was not the case. But yeah, I would say it, and it goes back to a lot of like focus more on your knowledge and the working on that than what do I have? What can I get to make myself better? Because then you start to rely on the thing versus the knowledge of what you're wanting to learn.
agreed. And fortunately, one thing I've learned through this process, which I've never really thought to do in my life, is exhaust the resources you have available to you now before taking it to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if I could instill wisdom upon anybody, it would be that sentence right there. Because one thing I was doing is, like, I was taking photos with my phone, but I didn't know, the rules of composition. I didn't know, I couldn't at the time tell you what aperture was or any of that. And so luckily I have great people in my life, and my financial advisor, who's become a really good buddy of mine now,
Yeah.
knew about my desire to want to to do more photography.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hey, I have a camera. You can have it. Essentially, you can borrow it indefinitely.
Right.
Is essentially what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see if this is actually something you're interested in, or if you just think it's something you're interested in and you're gonna like fall away from it in
Right.
6 months. So he loaned me his camera, a couple of lenses, some batteries, everything I would need to get started on a more professional level.
Yeah.
And he's like, you can YouTube how to make the camera work. I was like, oh, okay. I honestly, I knew how to turn it on, and that was about it.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at like, how to make this Canon camera do what I want it to do, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's how I found Udemy. There was a master class, and I'm only still about like halfway through the class, maybe not. It's like a 30-hour class on everything from camera basics to all the way to using Lightroom and Photoshop and everything. And so I've gotten through the components of the camera. I've gotten through, aperture and ISO and, the exposure triangle and composition and everything. And eventually you just get to a point where you have to stop learning and you have to start doing.
Yeah.
And within like a week of having that camera, I got my first gig at a health, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a local smoothie health food shop in Charlotte called Green Brothers.
Yeah.
And so my first gig was food photography. And it was a blast. I learned a lot from it, and I haven't, had a second gig yet, but or actually I say that, but I've done, some family portraits and stuff.
That's cool.
But where I lost track a little bit, like I can, but I can't at the same time take writing with me everywhere, right? Like I'm not always going to have a notebook. I do always have my phone, so I can put in a note, but every once in a while I get inspired by something and I want to capture that moment. And can't, but with photography I can. And an example, a real life example, my girlfriend and I were driving down from the mountains to come back to Charlotte. It's about a 2 hour drive. And I was just looking, and I looked to my right, and there was this blue house on a green backdrop, fog over the mountains overhead. And I was just like, we need to pull over. And she's like, what? And I was like, we need to pull over. I need to take a picture of this. and um, and I do that with my writing too. I'll be driving and inspirational spark, and I'm just like, as terrible as this is, and I don't recommend anybody do it, I'll just be like typing a poem while I'm driving. Creativity is a weird thing. To say all of this, to sum it up, creativity is a weird thing because it comes to you in the worst times. So for myself, how can I capitalize on those times when it comes?
Yeah. I find that I always feel like sorry for the people that are around me that don't understand that, because it's like you have to, if you want to really like be true to that creativity, you have to make people wait on you essentially. And you seem like the biggest jerk. You're like, or biggest diva or whatever. You're like, hold on, I've got to do something real quick. I've got to write something. I've got to take a picture of something, and I think it also probably is because I don't know, but it probably seems strange to watch happen, because I imagine myself kind of like really get internal, and usually in the moment I can't explain it. So if people want me to explain it, I'm like, you'll just have to wait, because it's still in development and it's inside of my head, and I got to work it out first. So yeah, I really, I get that. I love what you said about, you said the line, I think at some point you need to stop learning and you have to start taking action or something. And I think that for me is like a huge, takeaway. And that's something that I can walk away from this conversation as, something that I've learned, because I've always been, from as young as I can remember, I've like wanted to be perfect at everything before I do it. And I have all, and not just that, but like I've also like wanted to understand fully before I do something. And sometimes like there are certain things you just can't understand until you experience it. And it's like, I just thinking about it now, I remember back in like high school when we took driver's ed class, it's like people would say, do you know how to drive a car? And it's like, I read a book on how to drive a car, but it's different when you actually do it, and things happen that you can't prepare for and you can't, expect, and you have to learn in the moment. And that's what I've had to learn with taking photos too. Like you can stage something in your mind perfectly, but until you actually do something, um, it's not gonna play out the way you always expect. So I think people can learn a lot from that. Just, you know, when you get to a certain point where you're just like still learning, is probably the time that you need to just try it.
You said it best. I think you are your best teacher, and
Mm.
or you have the potential to be your best teacher. And in order to do so, it's you have to you I mean it did help to learn the basics of my camera and to learn, the exposure triangle and all these things, but eventually like I had to get out and I had to start creating, interesting um pictures in it, and it's harder than you think
Mm.
because, and I struggle with this right now, is I lack patience when it comes to taking photos. So
Mm.
I'm I see something in my mind, and instead of taking more time to get the photo that I'm truly seeing in my mind, I'm snapping away, and maybe I don't move from the vantage point that I want, or maybe I'm rushing the settings and it, it looks like it's clear, but then I get to my computer and it was actually blurry, and or I'm focusing on the wrong thing because I wasn't just taking the time to do things. So it's teaching me patience. It's teaching me to see things from different perspectives that I may not be seeing
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. I think, you know, that it just, like you said, you just got to do those things sometimes. And sometimes you are learning in the moment and you have these takeaways, and even like learning patience and you just gotta like, you gotta do something. I, and I think I say myself because I do experience this, but I'm sure there's so many other people out there that kind of experience that feeling of being frozen, and but I've got to learn. I don't know yet, and you you got to take away that fear of like, it may not be perfect, it may not, be what I want it to be, but you can never, when there's like this expectation of perfection without ever having done it, you will never like bridge that gap from, because there's not perfect, but even to make it better, like you'll never bridge the gap from where you're going to start to as good as you can get it to be if you don't ever do it, and mess it
Yeah.
up and, figure it out and redo it. And, so.
Fear is the all great mind killer.
Yes, it is. It kills, it kills that and so much more. It paralyzes and yeah. So, well, I appreciate you being so candid and open with sharing who you are and the things that you've learned. And I think that more people should know who you are, which is why I had you on here, because I think you're very wise and a great learner, and I think people can learn how to be great learners from the way that you learn. So
I appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you.
yeah. Well, where can people, if they want to see what you're doing and where you're going, where can they find you?
Instagram's probably the best. It's
Yeah.
the only social media app I'm the most active on.
Yeah.
You can find me at Only God Forgives,
Okay.
with 2 D's in God because it's a play on my last name.
Ah, I see that.
Yeah. I am on Facebook as well, but I'm not. I just use Facebook to just keep in touch with friends mostly.
Yeah.
I also have a fitness account on Instagram called Goddard Fit, which I'm not very active on. It was mainly to just compartmentalize people I was following.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I have a short story that was published on
Cool.
Amazon in a book called Hell Hour. It's my first piece of published writing.
Oh wow.
Second piece coming soon. And I'm hoping by the end of this year to have a poetry book of my own out on the shelves or more. And
Yeah.
so be on the lookout for those.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and I hope people come check you out and see what you're up to, because you're always up to something.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, John.
Absolutely. My pleasure. All right. Have a good one.
You too. All the love.